So hi everybody, I'm going to upload 30 minutes of the Q&A from the Masterclass the other night. So that's our first Masterclass on the back of the 21-day meditation challenge. We have 30 minutes of Q&A because we forgot to press the record button for the previous 60 minutes. So we had a 90-minute session. We had, I think, 35 or 36 people on there, which was just fantastic. But actually what's really good is the part that we recorded is some of the really good, simple ways for you to understand in really basic terms some of the benefits of meditation and mindfulness. So I'm very pragmatic as a teacher. I try to stay away from esoteric ideas around meditation and mindfulness, as you've probably seen if you followed any of my guided meditations as well. I like it to be grounded, I like it to be simple. You know, I personally follow the guidance of the Buddha, but that doesn't actually mean that I'm directly connected to any lineage within Buddhism, because simply put, each lineage has its own agenda, politics, etc. So I'm interested in mindfulness and meditation. I'm interested in the principles that the Buddha set out when he sat under a Bodhi tree and just came to terms with the two most important things that he realized. One, that there is suffering in the world, and two, there is an end to suffering. So when you have the suffering and you know there's an end to suffering, then you can move towards peace, calmness, and a little bit of serenity in your life. So follow on and see what you think.
Deep breath. I don't really have that much space to work from. So it's like not a huge amount of space. But if I'm relaxed and if I've let go of everything else that's going on, and then I say, okay, now I'll take in a deep breath, I can fill up my lungs and my belly. And you know, belly breathing and for you know, people who practice yoga and Pilates on here, especially teachers, will notice that you can have groups of classes and people cannot actually get air into their belly because they're so tight in the chest cavity that they can't actually drop down below. So it's what's happening, Mick, is that you're learning as you meditate to start letting go. And you know, you'll probably heard me say at this stage, ice to water from the shoulders. So you're just starting to let the shoulders come down a bit. So as you start to get the diaphragm just to open up and widen, that the breathing will come in. But it's, you know, it can be days, it can be weeks, it can be months. It's just, you know, slow improvements, and everything in the practice is slow and steady wins these races in meditation and mindfulness. So it will improve. You just kind of have to stay with it. But it's the breathing, as I said, and I see Ken on here, and we've communicated on this. If you take the breathing techniques out of those morning sessions and you take nothing else out, and you're in a difficult situation and something goes wrong in the day, and you know, to go back to what JK was saying, you know, a moment happens and you suddenly get a spike of fear. If you can just walk into a bathroom somewhere, put the toilet seat down, sit down on the toilet and just breathe for 2 or 3 minutes, you will notice that you start coming back into yourself and you're becoming more present and you're going, okay. So the breathing is something that we're nurturing all the time. That's why I do it always at the start. And I want everybody to kind of pay attention to that, because it's a transition into the right state of mind, but it's something that's valuable that you can just carry with you throughout the day. It's kind of like, in case of emergency, I can break the glass and use my breathing.
Well, yeah, it's just Justin, sorry to plummet. Does that mean it's enough to be just doing it in the morning, or should you try to just practice it later on the day in a relaxed state? You know, or is it enough just to be doing it during the meditation time, during the morning time, and over time then it gets better, even for that short period of time each day?
So for me with the breath, so my meditation is the same every day, but my breath exercises are you know, it's constant. So, you know, before we came on the call, I had to go and talk to my 13-year-old about, you know, I need you not to be on the Wi-Fi because we're both going to be on the Wi-Fi. So, you know, a conversation with a 13-year-old about not being on the Wi-Fi at 7:20 in the evening is not an easy one. So I need to use the breath because, you know, he is going to instantly come back and trigger me. So, you know, we use the breath in Buddhism as a mechanism not to become triggered. So somebody comes at you and they say, don't do that. So when they come at you, if you respond straight away, then you hit them back with something and then it all flares up. So the breath technique is the engagement with human beings. So I go into the room knowing I'm going to say this, there's going to be huffing and puffing and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I go, all right, I'm just going to listen to what he has to say. I'm just going to take a breath and I'm going to say, listen, man, it's only for 1 hour. Don't worry about it. You know, and you're back on tomorrow night. So the breath is with you all the time. So yeah, you can practice it on your own, but actually if you kind of have it there and know that when I have a difficult engagement with anybody, so if it's an interaction with your partner, your boss, a colleague on work, you know, the great author Viktor Frankl says the space between the stimulation and the response is where you find your freedom. And that means the stimulation is somebody says to you, "Oi, Mick, I'm not happy with what you're doing." When they say that to you, your instant response automatically is to go back and defend yourself and have a go at them. And then two people are now in loggerheads. So the distance between the stimulation and your response, the distance between it is the breath. So it's, I'm not happy with what you're doing. Take a breath. Now I react. Or you take a breath and you walk away and then you come back. So it's constant. And I use it all the time, especially with my newly found teenager.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Okay, just another a question from Elaine, who's saying, when I meditate in the evening at night, I have really, really lucid dreams. Is this normal?
At the start, yes, it will be. So the difference between going to sleep when you've, and this will also happen. So if you're meditating during the day, you may even start to notice that you have more lucid dreams in the evening time. So it's not necessarily even a correlation between the time I meditate and when I go to sleep. It's the fact that you're starting to get the body to relax. And as the body relaxes and you move into the rest and recovery phase, you're more grounded and you're more connected. So when you go into your sleep patterns, you tend to be more connected to your sleep. So it's a more engaged and peaceful sleep. And what can then happen is that you have a better connection into your dream state. And so there's two very interesting Eastern practices around dreams, and then there are the American Indians. So both in an Indian culture in the East and an American Indian culture in the Americas are that when we sleep, we go off into a different world, and when we wake up, we come into this world. So there's two worlds, in essence, is the way that they see it. From a psychology perspective, what we've really come to understand from mindfulness and meditation practice is that when we wake up in the morning, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I feel different, because when we come out of our dream state, we come out of our dreams and we've often been angry in our dreams. We've been sad in our dreams. We've been aroused in our dreams. We've been happy in our dreams. So we wake up in this different emotional state. So one of the main reasons why, again, we try to meditate in the morning is that we then equalize the state in which we move into our day. So we take our dream state and we arrive. So I wake up today and I feel really angry. I don't know why, but in my dream before I woke up, I was having an argument with somebody. So that emotional connection is still embedded in my body. So we try to practice meditation in the morning where we can, so that we create this kind of ground zero where we move into our day. So if you're noticing the lucid dreams, that's good, because it just means that you're feeling a better connection to yourself and you've got a greater sense of an awareness. So you're noticing the dreams tends to dissipate. So it starts to happen to people when they're practicing early on, and then they kind of just disappears, and you notice your dreams as you did before.
Okay, thanks,
just a question from Ken as well. Ken, do you want to ask it, or shall I read it out?
Yeah, sure. I'll ask it, Beatrice. Thanks very much. I think I mentioned this to you in the comments the other day, Justin, about I meditate in the morning generally, but some mornings I eat before I meditate, and sometimes I eat after I meditate. I find, and maybe this is just me, but is there a connection between not eating and meditating and eating prior to meditating? You know what I mean? Is the fact that there's less protein, salt, sugar, or whatever going through your system, does it help with the concentration levels, or is that just my mind playing tricks on me?
No, it's absolutely 100% a really, really valid point. And so in most traditions, so in Hinduism and in Buddhism, the core principle is that we don't eat until we've meditated. And there are many reasons for that. You know, principally food. So the highs and lows caused by salt and sugar have an impact on how we are with ourselves. But we also try to cultivate this sense of deep connection to ourselves, and to try and have our meditations at the same time. So you'll notice I keep going around the time issue, and I know it can be hard at times for everybody to try and meditate in the morning, but the science is really well grounded around morning meditation, as to our traditions. So within the Hindu tradition, which goes back 3,500 years, and the Buddhist tradition within 2,500 years, we always try and meditate before we eat. And I think, Ken, you were on one of my guided meditations where you noticed that you actually hear my stomach one day because my mic was on. You know, you can actually get to the point where you can feel quite hungry, but you're there and you're connected to yourself, and you just kind of notice, okay, yeah, I feel hungry. So it's the fasting before meditation has a really beautiful impact on the way that you connect into the body, and you're also incredibly grounded, because so much of our energy goes to our digestive system. So if we're digesting food and we're trying to be present, it can take away from the experience. It's not to say that you have to do it, but if you haven't done it before, give it a go and just see if you notice the difference in your meditation. So for me, for years, it's always the same. I never eat until I've finished my practice.
Yeah, thanks. No, I've been doing both, and I just noticed that when I fast before I meditate, that I'm less of the monkey mind, less of the demented flea hopping around. You know. So. Yeah,
because there are so much of our emotions are connected to food, and once the body is digesting, it's doing all kinds of things. So actually taking that out of the equation just has one less thing to deal with. And the more even if you can't meditate in the mornings, if you meditate later on during the day, always trying to find the same time is really helpful, because you start to learn a lot about how you experience it and how you feel. So if you're only going to be able to meditate at 6:30 at night, try and always do it at 6:30, because when you become more aware of your body and how you feel, and you notice how your digestive system feels, and you notice how your physical structure feels, and you notice how your wandering mind feels, it's always good to do it at the same time every day, because you get a better understanding of yourself, and you're better able to orientate why you're feeling certain ways, because you know the events that lead up to it and you know what's going to happen thereafter. Whereas if you meditate sporadically throughout the day, it's often very difficult to get that baseline to kind of measure yourself against.
I think there was one more question from Joseph about, is it okay, is it appropriate to meditate moments after you wake in the morning before getting out of bed?
Well, you can probably answer this question, Beatrice, because you bear witness to this and you do it yourself. Yeah, it's no problem. So, for the last 3 days, I've actually meditated in bed. So I've just woke up, got out of bed, I brush my teeth, get back in, I drink some water, and I meditate and sitting up in bed. I tend not to do it for one very simple reason, and that is that when you sit on the bed, there's a dip in your mattress, and it just doesn't support your posture properly. So you tend to just notice that your posture isn't as it should be, and it can be a little bit tougher on the lower back. So what my meditation practice in the morning is generally, within like 2 foot of the bed. I literally get out of bed and I'm just sitting on the wall beside the bed. So I try not to go too far away, because the more you move around the house, the more likely you're to interact with people. In our house, it's our dogs, and then it's our son. So I try and do it as close as I can to the bed as early as possible before I'm distracted. And in bed, if you're going to do it, have your back up against the board on the bed or the wall where possible. But it can just be a little bit more difficult because the bed kind of sinks a bit for the back for those of us who are aging.
I don't know if anybody has any last question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and get in there.
Hi, I have a question if I can, please.
Hi, Connor.
How's it going? Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Beatrice. I'm getting more out of this hour and a half than I have done, I think, collectively in several pursuits into meditation and mindfulness. So thank you. The delivery is resonating and the timing is very good too. I just wanted to ask, I messaged you separately about this, Justin, but I have my own idea, but I'm curious for yours. In support of the 21-day challenge, I decided to go completely cold turkey on caffeine as well. I just felt that was contributing significantly to the anxiety, which has unfortunately been magnified with the circumstances we find ourselves in, both professionally and personally for me. And I got a killer migraine the following day that lasted for probably about 36 hours. Into bed, curtains closed, lying horizontal, all of that. My own thoughts are that maybe there was a complete chemical rebalancing going on, where I'd been probably around 4 cups of coffee, possibly 5. I don't know where the measurements fall. I'm probably a bit generous. To suddenly none, and also by default, that was my dairy intake gone as well, because I really only have milk with my coffee too. So I'm just curious for your thoughts on that in terms of the chemical rebalancing or other.
Yeah. So caffeine's really interesting. So if you look at why or where the caffeine actually come from, the history of coffee was we found a stimulant that actually fired up our fight-flight response. So its sole purpose when we started to farm coffee and produce it was to give it to troops to fire up their fight-flight response. So we found it as a way to stimulate the mind, and we overstimulate the mind so that people have the capacity to push through and do more. There's a really interesting documentary on the Disney Channel, if anybody has that. I don't know if it's on anywhere else, but it's there's a comedian. Who's that guy who does that thing on the Disney Channel, Beatrice, I showed you? Oh, it's Jeff Goldblum. And Jeff Goldblum does this history of coffee. And one of the challenges with coffee, as you rightly say, Connor, is that it's a stimulant, okay? And it's a stimulant that's not too bad if it's just like I have a coffee in the morning, I'm waking up and I'm getting ready to be engaged and moving into my day. But if you have the coffee and if you've already woken up feeling anxious, coffee on that anxiety in the morning is really not dissimilar to alcohol on that anxiety at 9 o'clock at night. They're both chemicals that you put on top of what's already there, and you only just raise the game. And so in the day-to-day stuff, it's really worthwhile giving them up. But if you give them up, then you take something away from the body that will have a natural impact over the next few hours. So caffeine, if you stop all of a sudden, you will find it problematic. And the I suppose the horrible nature of the chemistry of the mind and the body is that if I drink coffee now, thankfully I don't have anxiety issues. So if I stopped drinking coffee tomorrow and I didn't drink coffee for 3 days, I wouldn't have any negative physical impacts. But because you're already, as you said, Connor, feeling the strain and the anxiety, you give up coffee, which your body has now decided that this is my crutch. So, I have a coffee because I want to kind of like deal with what's going on. But the crutch, like the alcohol crutch, is not real. It's actually fuel as well. So you step away from what it is that soothes you in the morning, and that is a withdrawal impact, which then brings you down the road of a migraine. And it's kind of, in the idea of life that I want to lead, life as it is, we often have to pass through the really difficult discomfort. And then when we get through it, as you've noticed now in the last day, the migraine passes, you move back into your practice, and you don't actually have that much of an issue in the context of being away from coffee. So taking some time away from it now will be really good. Or, just drinking decaf if you need to, because often it's the physical connection to the drinking of it rather than the caffeine. But caffeine for anxiety is like alcohol for anxiety. It just has to be avoided. Or, if it is alcohol and you're in a situation where you're drinking, that it's very, very moderate. But if caffeine is causing you those problems, I think it's great that you're off it and give yourself, a nice clean break. In 7 days, everything's out of the system anyway.
I
Meditation.
Well, I also think it probably is. I've a stillness present through the half-hour sessions that wasn't there either. So the sort of the fidget and the need to constantly go when I'm caffeine, suddenly I was not asking myself to do that. So the gap between what I was doing and suddenly what I became doing with doing the half-hour sessions was, even though I've done it many times before, I developed a few bad habits of late. So it was a bit of a yin and yang. And you're right, the break is working now, and I'm delighted that I'm doing it. I just wish I'd done it before starting the 21 days, if you like. But glad that I'm doing it now. I just had wondered the other side of that, if I can, the chemical releasing from doing meditation. What explanation do you feel might be there for me with that one in terms of overcoming anxiety and creating happiness, I suppose, and other factors through chemical release?
So the key thing about meditation in to use your words, to overcome anxiety or create happiness, we're never trying to create happiness. So here's the bad news. we don't try to meditate to create happiness, because sure. So in Eastern traditions and Eastern and Buddhist philosophy, we have a very simple way of looking at this. If I look for a high, then I have an inevitable low to follow. So often when people arrive at anxiety, their connection to life is like extreme highs and then extreme lows. So maybe things are going to be okay. Oh my God, they're awful. Or maybe they're going to be okay. Oh my God, they're awful. So we're moved through this kind of Richter scale. And this can be how we see life. It's like, and this is this constant, emotional roller coaster that we live on, which is then meaning that all of the chemicals are firing through the body. So our meditation practice is to start to equalize the ebb and flow of life. So we're not in a huge high, and therefore we're not in a huge low. So we start to just create a balance. And the reason why we call meditation a practice is because it is that, it's the consistency at which I show up to practice, and then how long I can continue to practice. So For me, I know that. So if I take it from a spiritual standpoint, I practice as hard as I can in this life so that in the next life, maybe it's a little bit easier for me. So what does that mean? Well, if I kick the bucket when I'm 87, on that last day, I'll think, okay, maybe today will be a really good practice and it'll be better than it was when I was 45, but it'll always be just slow, gradual improvements. One of the things I say when I'm working with people on a one-to-one basis is, imagine meditation is like an inflatable crash helmet. Okay. So right now in the Corona issues, the next thing that comes along, the job pressure or whatever else, it comes along and it just hits us. So you're in your office and you're trying to get on with what you're getting on, and somebody comes in and they said, oh my God, have you seen this? This is a major problem. And they hand it to you. And that event arrives like, boom, and it just punches you in the side of the head. And whatever you're doing right now is gone out the window because now you're just dealing with this next catastrophe. So you're going, oh my God, that is unbelievable. And now this problem isn't being dealt with, and this one is now a problem. So what we do in our meditation practice is we blow up our inflatable crash helmet, but it takes a long time. So every time I practice, it's like, so I now have this inflatable crash helmet. So life will still be as it is. I can't change that. But when the event arrives, it comes and it goes, and I'll still feel it, and I'll go, okay. So the person runs into my office and I notice it, and they go, oh my God, have you seen this? And I go, okay, yeah, that's okay. But I'm not, this is really important and I want to finish what I'm doing here. So why don't you just put that over there? Let me continue on what I'm doing here, and then I'll get to it. Or I'm able to actually measure, where is my priority? Which is more important, this task or this task? So the ease at which we're able to deal with anxiety is our capacity to start slowing down so that we have more of an ebb and flow. And if you can try and remember, I'm blowing up my inflatable crash helmet. So every time you practice, you put a little bit of air in. But the downside is that if you practice for 6 weeks and you've got a lot of air in, and you stop practicing for a week, the air goes out pretty quickly. So it's the consistency of practice, it's staying with it. And even on days where if you can truly develop a practice on the back of this 21 days and you continue on, if you have a bad day where things are going wrong and you're done up the time, I will always say, okay, you know what? I'm going to meditate for 6 minutes, because even if I just show up for those 6 minutes, I'm still maintaining the consistency of my practice. So it's the consistency over time that starts to ease the way that we feel about life rather than easing our anxiety, if that makes sense, Connor.
Makes huge sense. Great metaphor. I think visually, so that's forever going to be embedded now. It might be inflatable American football or hurdy helmet. I haven't decided which yet.
Yeah, it works. It works for me all the time, and it's definitely. It just means that whatever happens, it's here and not here.
Thank you.
So I think we'll wrap it up there.
We have one last question from Trish.
Hi, how are you, everyone?
Hi, Trish.
Again, the two of you for this evening. It's lovely. I'm just wondering, when you started practicing meditation, say when it came into your life, was it start of a new life for you, but also for your family? And does it help if your whole family, if you like, engages and embraces this approach? Like it's a family approach then, or can it be that you just do it for yourself, but you're still operating within your family who possibly still has the approach to flight, fright, freeze, if you're working on your breathing?
Yeah, brilliant question. So I think, look, it's very much dependent on the family and the relationships that you have with people around you. For me, I think, I can't remember how long I was meditating before Beatrice, you started meditating, but I suppose you've been meditating now for what, 3 years, maybe 4 years, something like that.
Yeah, probably something like that.
And so if we go back to what I said about the idea of the ripple effect, you know, we know that our own behaviors through time will influence other people. And one of the things that you're never able to do with meditation and mindfulness is tell people that they should do it. It's really a waste of time. What starts to tend to happen is that as you practice more and you start to become calmer and more focused and more grounded, people start to take notice and go, what is that you're doing now? You know, I seen you doing some kind of breathing. What's all that about? And the most important adage within Buddhism is where we say, you know, when the student is ready, so too is the teacher. So we can encourage people in our family to meditate, but you know, they'll do it when they want. And with our son Luca, he's learned the benefits of it in sport. So, you know, it's helpful that I've worked with professional sports people, because then he thinks, okay, well, then if you do that, then maybe I should do it. So with kids, you know, just because your mother and father do it, that's probably not really going to be a great starting point as to why they should do it. So we got to the point now where before he plays his football matches and he's a goalkeeper, he has 10 minutes on the way to the game where he just focuses on his breathing. He slows down. He uses some visualization techniques to remember successes of the past. And it means that he knows when he arrives, he's more on his game. But it also means that as a goalkeeper, you know, you make a mistake and you're in deep trouble, right? You're out there on your own. And he's become a very good goalkeeper. And the one thing that his managers will say all the time to us is he's got an incredible capacity to just let go of that incident that just happened and get back into the game again. So he lets a goal in, he makes a mistake, he's not dwelling on it, he's able to move forward quickly. So he's learned that through breathing. But there was no point in me telling him, Trish, this is how I want you to meditate, this is what I want you to do. I nurture it, he sees us doing it, it's happening in the house, it's a ripple effect. And then you can encourage people. There's a great book, and I'm terrible to remember everything, so Beatrice is my memory, called The Magic Shop.
Oh, Into the Magic Shop.
Into the Magic Shop, which Luke is just starting to read now. And for anybody who wants to delve into neuroscience and meditation and mindfulness, Into the Magic Shop by James Doty. So James Doty is the head of neuroscience at Stanford University. He's an incredible human being, like extraordinary human being. It's an extraordinary story of a kid growing up with alcoholic parents, really difficult environment, violence, you know, drugs, alcohol, everything. And a woman one day, just out of the blue in a magic shop, saw this 11 and 12-year-old kid and over the course of 6 weeks in the summertime, taught him how to meditate. And his life changed forever. And, you know, he now works with the Dalai Lama on multiple projects around the world. The Dalai Lama is the biggest investor into Stanford study around neuroscience and mindfulness. And he's written this unbelievable book. I mean, it's just such a beautiful journey. So if you want to try and encourage other people into it, this is a really nice book to drop down, because you kind of read it and you go, holy shit, like this kid came from nothing and achieved so much. But he also shows the dark side of meditation. So it's like the force, right?
Okay.
When you become present, you can use it for good or evil. And for me, as a recovering capitalist, as I would like to call myself, and I think if Alison Beach is still on the phone, she remembers my capitalist days. There's Alison. You know, I had a very good ability to be present and use that to my benefit when I was younger, to actually manipulate outcomes and people and businesses and get what I wanted. And James Doty in this book shows that beautifully, how he navigated that and got all of the things that he thought he needed from a material perspective, and then eventually how he comes back around to what this woman teaches him. So you can't force it. but you can introduce it, and that book is a fantastic resource. I can't recommend it enough. I'm not getting any commission from James Doty. I do know him, and I've communicated with him post reading his book. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there are no other questions at the moment.
Okay, great. Well, so thanks everybody. It's been really nice to see all the faces and to take the time. And what I intend to do is that we'll do the same thing again on day 14 if you're around, and we'll do the same thing again on day 21. And it's just interesting because day 14 is quite different again. So you start to notice a little bit more about what's going on. And then on day 21, the last couple of meditations become quite different. We do a lot more work just focusing on the breath and not using the body scan. So there'll be lots of different ways and means and how you feel. So if I could ask you to still just keep sharing with me on the pages on the website. I do get on there every day, and I know some days I might get back later than others to your feedback, but I think it's great for everybody else to see it. And there's people now who are on day one. So it's a whole bunch of people just started a couple of days ago. Unbeknownst to me, they've somehow found it. So it's really helpful that, there's kind of breadcrumbs now on the trail that they can see how other people have felt as they've gone through it. So keep sharing. It's great to read, and I'll keep coming back and sharing what I can, and we'll get back on day 14. And practice is key. So it's, my mantra when I work with people, and they learn to hate me because I can also be quite a tough person to work with. But my mantra is wake up, show up, do the work, and repeat. And the repeat part is when you go to sleep, you again wake up, show up, and do the work. And that's what meditation and mindfulness is in life. It's the consistency of knowing that, how do I find happiness? I connect to myself, I do the work on myself, and I'm consistent in the context of how I show up for myself. There's no quick fix, there's no magic pill, but it's when you develop and cultivate the capacity to keep doing it consistently over time, you move from life the way I want it to be to life as it is. I manage what I can control in this moment. I don't look to influence and control things that are outside of my vista. It's only what's here. And there I find some peace and some freedom and eventually some calmness. So thanks, guys. We will reconvene on day 14 if you can take the time. And again, if there's any questions in advance of that or anything shows up, just pop it on the page, and I'll answer them throughout the day. So namaste, and thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. It's been so nice. Thank you. Thanks, Beatrice. You've been a star.
Thank you. Luca's coming to say hello. Hey, Luca. Hi.
See.
So I'm going to Carl and Christine because they last saw him when he was about 3, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's quite some time. He's grown a bit since then, Carol and Christina. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.